Hello and welcome to News 9 Live. The Home Ministry has ordered a CBI probe against Oxfam for FCRA violation. Cbi Inquiry was ordered against the NGO Oxfam India. On the orders of Home Minister Amit Shah, the Home Ministry handed over the order of investigation to the CBI. Oxfam FCRA license has already been cancelled 2 times earlier. And to speak more on this, I am today joined by 2 of my colleagues. Krishna Kumar is in the studio with us, and also Ajit Vijay Kumar. Welcome both of you. And I just think that it's very dichotomous, Ajit. I'll start with you if you don't mind.
Right.
It's very dichotomous. Oxfam works for the marginalized. If you look at it, they do reports on the tribals, on the Adivasis, and like I said, those who are marginalized. Their whole idea is that whoever or whatever the Constitution is unable to protect due to whatever reasons, we shall take care of them. And today, there is an inquiry against them.
Right, I think we are mixing 2 issues here. While no one is doubting in terms of what they are doing at the ground level, I think there are certain rules that one has to follow in terms of foreign funding. I think this whole case is about that, and the FCRA amendment of 2020, is quite stringent in that manner in terms of what kind of money can you get in and via which route. One of the very important things and which has caused a lot of problems to a lot of NGOs like Oxfam is that you will have to, and all these NGOs will have to open an account in the State Bank of India Parliament Street branch. So irrespective of from wherever you get the money, that money will first have to be parked at the SBI branch in Parliament Street, and from there you can then transfer it and do. That's one of the key fundamental problems that I think these NGOs are now facing. But more than that, I think in terms of the whole idea about NGOs and what they do, I think that there should be some more leeway, as you said, in terms of what they're doing at the ground.
Right, and that's what, Krishna, I wanted to ask you. And the thing is that there is a perception, or rather the NGOs under scanner has been headlining for the longest time, and not just NGOs, but bodies which work outside the ambit of the government or the private sector. So what do you think? I mean, do you think that in this case there was a clear-cut violation, like Ajit says, which they could not have circumvented, and therefore this happened?
Right, because this is a new, addition to the FCRA, under which they're not able to qualify. And also bear in mind that there have been other, inquiries against Oxfam in India. This is the CBI inquiry that we're discussing. That's the latest, because it's the central government. The Home Ministry has asked the CBI to probe Oxfam. Bear in mind, the IT department has already raided Oxfam, premises in September 2022, if I'm not wrong. There was also other, investigations against Oxfam and its funding back in May 2022 as well. So this has been a continuing series of probes, from what I can understand as to what is happening with Oxfam. And as you rightly pointing out, Oxfam research reports and data are used by, media houses and just about everybody, the general public, highly respected, research reports that represent people for who are not represented, and many other reports that really enlighten us about so many things around the world. So there is no doubt about Oxfam and its research and what it's the work it's doing, and etc. etc. The question here is the legality of its existence as an entity under the laws of India. And there is FCRA, the Foreign Currency Regulation Act, under which you need to have certain amount of funding that has to be coming from certain sources for you to qualify to exist. So the problem here is that what is the problem from Oxfam's end in making sure compliance is met with? Ajit, so many organizations are doing from WhatsApp to every organization, international organization in India, are doing what they can to comply with the laws of the land. That's what you're supposed to do when you operate in any country.
But that's what Ajit, I want you to really decode this for everybody who's watching this. What did they do? Did they, for someone, for a viewer, when you talk about violation of an act which is mandatory, the first thing which strikes you is, oh, there is money involved. So what exactly did they do, and what were they not supposed to do?
So as you said, that this case is also particularly about the money that is coming in from outside. And as I said, one of the key rules is that you have to bring into a certain account and then give out to people. But here I think what they have done is that they have kind of routed that money through other sources, through other people involved in it, which is a violation again of this. So, and one more thing that has come as per the amendment of 2020 is that only 20% of the money that you get from outside can be used as your operational expenses. Earlier it was 50%. So they had to give an account of only 50%, and 50% could be transferred as operational expenses. So what now is actually happening, and why the CBI inquiry is also, possibly there, is because there is some amount of money that they are not able to kind of
reaching the 20% mark.
Account for.
Yes, so that's
in
what.
Terms of.
Yeah, but there is, Krishna, I want to ask you, because just before the show began, we were talking about, and you rightly said that, Oxfam reports are used by media houses. It's used by students. It's used by research scholars. It's used across. Yeah. Don't you think that these kind of reports, when the CBI inquiry has been ordered, NGOs who work in this sector, it takes a beating, their reputation.
Of course,
and what happened? I mean, you think that this is not for profit organization which is doing some work which benefits you, me, and everybody, and particularly those who do not have agency.
Oh, absolutely. That's the dichotomy that, in fact, you began speaking about. So you make reports about how things should be, how ideally things should be. Right. Which means that complying to the laws of the land and etc. Amongst many other things. The issue here is that as far as the image of Oxfam is concerned, you're absolutely right. Oxfam has a great image in the minds of students and research scholars and media journalists and etc. This kind of an issue is exactly the kind of thing that Oxfam should not be dealing with, should have worked beforehand to make sure it doesn't come up to this level where you have the central government ordering a CBI inquiry into Oxfam. When they had previous issues, their license has been cancelled twice earlier. When they had previous issues, there could have been ways to reconcile with the laws or with the regulations of the Indian government, with the funding restrictions that have been placed. And clearly, there has been something that has gone wrong within Oxfam, and they would ideally want to correct this at the earliest. Because at the end of the day, Oxfam's reports will continue, but the levels with which people, the credibility levels is what it might take a beating if it keeps running into the running against the Indian government.
And I would like to add to what he just said. In terms of, one may have one's own argument in terms of what Oxfam is doing at the ground level, but the fact of the matter remains is that if you're doing good and if you're getting money from outside, you have to have certain amount of regulation from the government.
Yes.
Okay, one can debate in terms of the level of scrutiny, but then there has to there should be some amount of scrutiny. You can't say that, okay, I'm doing good, so just let me do what I want to do.
That's true. You can't possibly do that.
True,
Absolutely not.
True.
I want to ask you, for the benefit of the viewers, is this does not happen. This did not. A lot of people had reacted saying, "Oh, this happened." So this is not like boom, it happened one day, right? So why don't you take us through the timeline of it, as it were? Because 2 years ago, was it 2 years ago, Ajit, when the entire FCRA violation came under the scanner? So would you like to take the viewers through what happened?
I'll start by giving an example of some other organization, which is a cancer hospice. Run in Rishikesh. Okay, so they have all their books all clear, but they are also fighting for FCRA clearance. They have nothing to worry about. But then, because the amount of scrutiny has come in, and I think the government is looking at more from a point of view of is some amount of money that is coming via the NGO route is being used to subvert the system in India in terms of the national security of the country.
Right.
Possibly that's the reason why the screws were tightened in 2020. And there's some bit of history. I think it was between 2010 and 2019 when the amount of money that was coming into India actually exploded. And then the government had to step in and bring in stringent rules.
Right. So that is one of the. You were saying something, Krishna.
Right. In that sense, it's a continuation of the overall scrutiny of NGOs per se within the country, isn't it, Ajit? Oxfam happens to be the latest, who right now is facing a high-profile probe. It could have easily been a consultation meeting between the government and the NGO in question. The fact that it has to be so confrontational and a CBI inquiry has to be launched is what is very surprising, isn't it, Ajit?
And also, adding to what you just said, that Oxfam, because we know Oxfam.
Yes.
But then there are thousands of other NGOs that are also facing the same thing.
But the thing is that a lot of others, which we will not talk about vendetta, etc., etc. I also only want to know that there are lots of people who work with Oxfam. So now with the CBI inquiry, Ajit, is it curtains, or do you think that this can go on once the probe is over, they can be back in operation?
Right. So if we were to go by the Greenpeace example, right? So one doesn't know in terms of how Oxfam it turned out to be in India, but I think CBI inquiry is serious news for them, and I think it would be better for them to get their books in order, or at least find a way out in terms of that middle path, whereby they can get the kind of funds that they require without much of interference from the government. And I would want to add here also that all those people who kind of criticize the FCRA amendment also point to India's obligation to international laws, right? Like in 1948 itself, we had signed an Freedom of Association Act, as part of the UN Charter, and that kind of allows people to have that freedom to actually link up and associate with people and join and act as a third force, so to say, as a power group. And not directly involved in politics, but then they can certainly have political views. So all those people who kind of have problems with FCRA and the regulations that are in India, they are of the view that this is all guys in terms of wanting to control the narrative by the government.
Right. Krishna, when we speak about NGOs and lots of other organizations who have violated what is mandatory, like FCRA and other rules and regulations, like Ajit said, you have to be very, very thorough when it comes to that. Yeah. The thing is that the bleeding hearts are going to get up, I'm sure, and say that, why is it that, there are so many other examples of fugitives who fled, etc., etc. Don't you think that's a kind of a facetious argument? I mean, you have to follow the rules. You do the good, like Ajit said, you do all the good, but for God's sake, follow the rules.
I'd save myself from, what's going to happen to the bleeding hearts versus those, who have hearts which don't bleed. I think these are hardcore political takes, Sudha, and I wouldn't like to put myself in either of these camps. The point here is that NGOs do a good job, and as Ajit said that, or even NGOs who do a good job have to come under a certain level of scrutiny. And the message here is that maybe there wasn't enough scrutiny for a very long time. And, and as he's talking about, it's an international commitment you're making to, because what happens in these situations is money laundering becomes the reality when it comes to these funding issues. And what happens with these amendments to the FCR and etc. is to cut down on money laundering, that the money that is coming in the name of the good is put to use exactly for the good. And more importantly, money is not sourced from internationally to drive a particular narrative within the country, which we are witnessing, everywhere from Punjab to elsewhere.
Right, and one more key, part of the new FCRA amendment is that you will have to spend the money on the issue or for the issue that you have asked the money from outside, right? So you can't ask the money for say for kids and spend it on food. Right. You'll have to spend it on kids, right?
Yeah,
that's the thing.
They're very particular about how the money is dispersed and spent.
And right? if I may, it's the same problem that Chief Minister Pinarayi Vijayan is facing in Kerala. What was the money taken for the CM disaster relief fund, and what is being used for? To me, this entire crackdown on the funding sources of NGO is all about ensuring that the money which is being sourced for is what is being put to use for, and the money is being sourced for the right reasons.
Right reasons, and not for something which is really questionable.
Yes.
Let me thank both of you for joining me on this show. For more news and analysis, keep watching News 9 Live.